on the same wavelength. All right. Oh, let me see if this works. Fantastic. Um, does this? Am I? Let me stop this for a second. Hold up. I just want this. There we are. All right, fantastic. So, Paulin Oliveros, a composer, going back, a composer, a creator, and a music philosopher. Now, the reason I kind of found her is when I was looking for classical composers in this project. At first, I was really looking for one that would correlate between like classical and electronic music because I don't know if I said this before, but I really came into composing from the angle of producing electronic music. And so I've always been wondering if there is kind of a link going back from classical music to, or were composers going into electronic music. And so I was looking around and there had been like some DJs who would put a beat underneath a classical orchestra. But I mean, that seems a little fake. You're both faking the electronic part and you're also faking kind of the classical music. So I was really looking for someone who explored that whole category. And by sheer luck, I stumbled into the wonderful world of Paulin Oliveros. She is a female composer who was born in 1945, recently passed away in 2016. And although she is relatively well known by people who are deep into the classical world or have at least a little bit of experience with John Cage and members along those kind of avant garde composers. Um, she really wasn't that um, well known or as well known as I thought that she should be, given how influential I believe her music to be. And as we'll go into later on, I'm going to be showing you guys or presenting to you guys a lot of her electronic music that she also worked with at the same time for compositions, and then showing you an electronic music piece, and that's just strictly EDM, and showing you guys how similar a lot of her styles are. So, anyway, I am getting caught up in the moment. So, Paulin Oliveros, in her early life, she was born on May 30th, 1932, in Houston, Texas. One of the more influential stories is when she was in kindergarten and she walked over to the music cabinet and she wanted to get this drum. She wanted to get a old drum that she could bang on. And the teacher, oh, getting a chat. Oh, the share is jumping to my notes. This is so unfortunate. I apologize. Is it back on the is it sharing my full screen or is it just sharing the
We can see both actually, the notes and the screen.
what? This is so weird. I apologize for technical difficulties.
Okay.
Just do that. I want to share computer sound, and I only want to select.
There might be
this
a
guy.
presentation mode. There you go.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah.
But then if I have this in the corner,
Yeah. Then.
Oh, yeah.
So you're
oh
sharing your full
no!
screen. So what you want to do is just share just a presentation window rather than your whole screen. Because if you share your whole screen, then we see everything you see.
Yeah, that's what I'm selecting the. I'm selecting just the particular screen that is Google. This is really interesting.
You might want to go to advanced.
Actually,
okay.
I have something else that might work. If you give me a solid 2 seconds. Apologies for technical difficulties. I didn't expect this to be an issue that I was using a little bit.
I have done it to many of my students, so I apologize too.
Alright.
So while we're waiting, Claire Chase, who is a proponent of Paulin Oliveros and contemporary music, she's a fantastic flutist, but she's lately been battle crier for contemporary music. So this summer, in June, she organized a worldwide session, and they performed a chant by Pauline Oliveros. And apparently there was like 1,000 participants participating in this sort of over Zoom. I missed it because I found out about it after the fact. So her music is oftentimes like she has a piece it's about breathing. So the whole audience and the performers breathe together and create tones. She has another piece that's about sort of like Om kind of chanting, and everybody sings at different pitches, and it can be expanded out to 1,000 people.
And if I spotlight this, all right, here we go.
Here we go.
There's some weird, interesting back end stuff that if you want to learn, I can teach you guys how to do this too. Yeah. So, Pauline Oliveros, as I was mentioning, in a kindergarten class, a teacher, she was banging away on her drum, and a teacher took away her drum and gave it to a boy, and instead turned around and gave Oliveros a kazoo. And she mentioned that in an NPR article or a little interview that she had, that was, although a very influential part of learning and growing up as a child in the late 40s and early 50s, especially before you had the whole, different rights movements going on and really trying to support minorities and women going on that same era. As you can see by this picture, at the age of 10, she was given an accordion by her mother, who was a pianist, and she would go on to play the accordion, although it kind of fell out of style throughout the 50s and 60s. She would go on to play it her entire life, and in addition to the accordion, she also played the violin and French horn, and I also learned she had experience with tuba, and this is all through high school. This is before she even hit college, so very experienced and I dare say really, really musically talented. Education and inspiration. So first off, in the top left, you'll see a picture. That is the Moores School of Music from the University of Houston, as she was born in Texas. After studying there, she completed a bachelor's in music composition from San Francisco State University. While she was there, she was inspired by a group of her fellow classmates to get involved in the creation and the founding of the San Francisco Tape Music Center. Now, for those of you guys who might be a little bit younger like me, not really knowing what the heck a tape center would be, all music would be collected and recorded on these tapes, and they would be played on these tape players. And the idea of the tape center or the tape music center, was to have not only a facility to store all of these musical tapes, but was also to give younger composers a positive and productive work environment to even utilize these tapes for musical purposes. And as I'll show you guys later on, there are some pieces from this era that she was working in this at the Tape Music Center, where she actually utilizes tapes with reverb and delay all manually, which is one of the most interesting things for me, being all I know about reverb and delay and cutoff being just effects that I use electronically. And I'm sure you guys have heard of delay and reverb as well. The Tape Music Center was also one of the very few places on the West Coast that was actually working with electronic music at the time, where they actually had a series of 100. They had it was a 100x oscillator, which means that they had you could set up your oscillators to combine different sine waves to create different patterns and electronic frequencies, almost the same way you'd get tone or timbre out of your instrument, which is hugely influential in being able to create synth sounds or electronic effects. Uh, in addition to the other composers that were working there, she really got involved. Again, she was a co-founder and would actually become a director of the center for 5 years. During the course of the 5 years, the center actually moved over to Mills College, no longer very independent, but it was still given a lot of independence to do where, you know, whatever the young composers there would like to do. This went on until 1967, where she left Mills for a faculty music department position at the University of California, San Diego. And while she was there, her compositional style shifted in response to her newfound ability to study Native American cultures, East Asian religions, and specifically Buddhism in that sense. And you started to get a sense through her compositions where, at this point, she had stopped using notated pitch directly to time, which sounds absolutely crazy, but it is a thing that she was very interested in. And at this point in her career, she had made that jump into the using different notational styles to really go after this type of music that she was looking for. She began composing pieces that incorporated both natural sounds, such as the performer's own breathing, as Professor just mentioned, and those that were shaped through meditative improvisation. This was collectively called Sonic Meditations in 1971. These 16 pieces laid the foundation for what she would later coin as deep listening. So there's going to be a lot of different pieces that you might hear about, but to kind of set it kind of straight, she had these pieces, Sonic Meditations, that she composed as she was a teacher, as she was a professor there, and through the evolution that she took, she eventually would go on to create and coin the term deep listening. While she was at the university, she worked with a man by the name of Lester Ingber, a theoretical physicist and karate master, to define the attentional process as applied to music listening, is what they coined it. It was another way of saying how does one listen intently? How does one take in the world around them, not just from hearing, but through active listening? And as I mentioned, given that one of her professors was karate master, he also brought her up to speed, and she became a black belt in karate. Because what else are you going to do at college when you're doing something like that? I thought that was just absolutely insane. Continuing on, in 1973, when the University Center for Musical Experiment was just 1 year old, she began conducting studies on the processes behind hearing and listening. So now she's actively applying these processes that she's been learning about, and she explored through her sonic meditations. And she is now conducting studies with the help of other researchers. She served as the director for the Center for Musical Experiment from 1976 all the way up to 1979. And finally, in 1981, she left her tenured position as a full music professor to escape the creative constriction and moved to upstate New York, where she stayed until she passed away in 2016. Throughout her musical journey, in 1975, I apologize, that's 1980, she would go on to establish the Pauline Oliveros Foundation, which was dedicated to the principles of her newly coined deep listening. One of the really cool things I found about this particular foundation, which would go on to be an institution, is the way that Pauline Oliveros' music, especially her meditative compositions, worked, is it does not constrain the player or any of the people involved to be strictly forced into the right pitch or rhythm. And so this is a very, very engaging way to bring mentally ill in for her case, she brought in a lot of mentally ill children to get involved with music for the first time. You know, if they that they wouldn't otherwise be able to, they were able to participate in musical groups based around this music that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. And I thought that was really inspiring, and I thought that was really really cool. Um, Additionally, she held honorary doctorates from in music from University of Maryland, Baltimore County, Mills College, Oakland, California, and De Montfort University in Leicester, United Kingdom. That is a whole lot in terms of her musical kind of journey. But she is a very, very multifaceted person, and it's hard to do her justice in just one slideshow. So I really would encourage you guys to check her out with some of the resources in later on the PowerPoint if you guys are at all interested in this kind of stuff. But she's really just a fascinating person. Just kind of going on her kind of awards, I highlighted some of the important ones. She ended up receiving an ASCAP Standard Award in 1982 and 2005. Some of her individual pieces ended up getting awards, for example, Variations for a Sextet and Sound Patterns. She received for in her involvement in electronic music, which is interesting because that particular award often goes to actual electronic producers. She ended up getting this Gigahertz Award for Lifetime Achievement in Electronic Music. She was also awarded a John Cage Award, which, if you know anything about the music of John Cage, makes a lot of sense given how contemporary his own music was. And I found her music to be very much a jumping off point from where John Cage left off. Continuing on, so here are some examples of some early works that I mentioned for classical groups. You guys might find a little interesting. Have you ever heard of a trio for piano, flute, and a page turner? Well, I hadn't either, so that really caught my attention. And I would like to mention that the majority of the pieces that you'll find are actually available through the Cornell Library, the halftrust.org. You'll have to go through and work out some logistics, but you can use your Cornell account currently through the Emergency Temporary Access Service and actually get access to all of this stuff, which I find was very, very cool. Just to bring you guys up to speed on this piece, this is a trio for flute, piano, and page turner, as I mentioned before. Oh, can I zoom in? There we go. Where it mentions that this piece is one that the last piece that was notated with, sort of this sense of rhythm and pitch just on the sheet music. And it's one of the last pieces that you can play or be able to perform just like a kind of regular performance in classical music. One of the there's a couple of comedic aspects to the piece, one of which the page turner actually has parts where they hold down notes for the piano to then play and create a new harmonic. The piece is also based around the idea of looking at the harmonics between the flute and the piano and seeing which one is slightly coming out more than the other. In one funny story that happened, the piano tuner saw that there was an eraser on the A string of the piano, which is a preparation for this piece, and removed it before the second ever, I believe she mentioned it was the second ever run through of this piece. And so it was fun to hear. I believe she mentioned, yes, it was a neatly sabotaging the piece in a very funny way that would not be very common. So there's just one example of some of the pieces that she was arranging, giving her compositional style. There's also this Variations for Sextet. Oh, my apologies. Need to check out the work. There we are. This variations for sextet, in which you have a C, music notated in C. However, there are different stylistic changes and markings that she will mark kind of all over this page, and you'll see that it is in her own handwriting that make this piece very interesting to play. I haven't actually found a recording of this or the previous version. So if people were at all interested in looking at that, I think that is an interesting opportunity to play some music that is really out there, but very fun nonetheless. And I mentioned that these are some of her early works. Also, she continued, in addition to some of her electronic music that she was working with, she continued arranging for cello, violin, piano, classical pieces, in and involving a piece called Tree/Piece. And I actually do have a recording of this one I can let you guys listen to a little bit. Just 1 second. Actually, I should bring this particular piece over here. I made a playlist of the available works I could find off of YouTube, and here's the one for Tree/Piece, so you guys can get a general sense of what this piece is about. Are you guys able to hear this?
No.
No.
Uh-uh.
Oh. Let me double check something with my share screen.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. Okay, thank goodness. So the basics behind this piece is that it involves a scale of given pitches to the players, and I can actually show you guys some of the pitches here. So in this first particular section, I will turn this down a little bit. There we are. In this first particular section, they are given this particular scale, and they have the notation either a C, no C is marked here, which corresponds with a series of definitions for particular events that are supposed to happen throughout the piece. And a C stands for complex events. Simple events are unmarked, and they, throughout this piece, the players are allowed to create simple either pitches, chords, or sounds, which are specified to not have any sort of pitch quality whatsoever, although it may contain pitch. And or for a complex, you are allowed to then go on and create a melody, rhythm, pattern, or harmonic progression that can, as it mentions here, utilize all the parts of the given pitches. And so as they're going through, sorry, this is part 4. They're currently on part 1 right now. Oh, and I should mention that the entire piece is around the idea of a tree that is slowly growing throughout the piece. So, if you're looking for explicit harmony or explicit, chord progressions to kind of guide your way through, as I made the mistake of when I first listened to this kind of music, you might find it a little jarring at first or very disorientating. But once you understand that, I remember Rehan brought this up, is once you understand the pattern behind the piece, it really gives you a greater appreciation for what's going on, and it allows you to understand and just listen to it better. All right. So I will stop this share and continue on. All right, I'm still here. Fantastic. So continuing on, um, I believe, as Professor Kim mentioned, she was involved with creating. This is incorrect. It should be 16 sonic meditations. Um, oh, that's right. I can. So, a general sense of what the sonic um, meditations were designed to do is it was supposed to give the listener and participant a sense of the ability to meditate. But what's very interesting is it was able to do this both with vocal sounds. Sometimes it's specified to be in nature, sometimes it's specified a position or color of clothes that you were explicitly supposed to wear, depending on which one of the 16 ones that you were um, doing. So if I give you guys, I will show, that's right, I need to share my screen again. This is a performance of arguably the most famous meditation.
Any number of persons sit in a circle facing the center. Begin by simply observing your own breath. Always be an observer.
So everyone who's participating in the particular meditation is given all the instructions verbally, and all of these instructions are actually written out on separate pieces of paper. And I actually did some scouring through the internet, and someone has collected all 16 and put them together in a list. So I can give you guys that. That's involved in the references of this.
As long as possible naturally, and until all others are quiet. Always observing your own breath cycle.
And one other thing to mention about this particular set of meditations is it really paved the way for her ideas and philosophy on listening itself, which she wanted it to become a much more active experience. I remember distinctly, Professor, your experience not wanting to be background music for people exiting the stage because the classical music is supposed to be up front, and she thought very, very in a similar way, where she felt that music created as background music is not letting the listener actually appreciate the music as fully as they could. And in a continuation on that philosophy, these pieces are really supposed to represent that, yes, this is music, this is notated and scripted in such a way, but it involves so much more participation from people who would otherwise be considered an audience member to be both a audience member and participant within the piece. And that's kind of going through the 16 meditations. So, going into some of her electronic works, this is where I got inspired, but she's, once again, many, many different aspects of her work. I am prepared to show you all some of her electronic explorations from the 1960s. I should warn you guys, if you are wearing headphones or otherwise don't like scratchy noises, to turn down your headphones for a little bit, and then bring it up to a place where you feel comfortable, because coming into these songs blind is a little bit of a jarring experience. So to begin this piece, I apologize. I don't really know how loud that is over my voice. This is one where she's actually taking a tape, and she actually has a series of 3 tapes throughout this piece, and she is looping that tape with delay reverb that she's handling manually, as well as a couple of different oscillators, and I believe a theremin or an equivalent to a theremin that she's actually controlling. And so everything you hear in this is completely done live. There is no scripting for this particular piece other than, in her sense, building the machine itself. But that was a philosophical argument that she had with another um, discussion that she had with another critic of hers.
Peter, can you make it a little louder?
I can. I'm going to skip forward a little bit just to give you guys some other aspects of some other sounds she finds. She also starts building up a little bit of a cacophony here. And just for yourself listening, hearing all these effects that I kind of have heard throughout time, you might have heard like old sci-fi movies or other stuff, being created in 1966 was an absolutely insane experience. Although it doesn't have any sort of base in harmony or rhythm, which is very much the point of the piece, I kind of hear this as almost an effects reel that is being played in a way that is musical. At least that's my personal interpretation of it. That's my way of hearing it. Other pieces that I should bring up that are in this kind of sense. She had a very influential piece called Bye Bye Butterfly, in which she made, this is very much written as a statement against the kind of cultural norms of the 19th century, involved with the classical era and just the way that both women and minorities were treated in that era, in a statement of that although this kind of butterfly, where she's actually sampling a particular opera, it's probably written, nope, it is not. She's referencing a particular opera, I can't remember which one, but it has something to do with butterfly in the name. And I'll get to the point where she starts to use that particular recording inside of her song. I think later on it starts to get more distorted. Yes, as he starts adding up more and more effects, you start to get more piercings into it, which starts... sorry, I don't know how loud that is for you guys. It just spiked up in volume for my ears, as it happens with this kind of music. But it was very much a statement that took the... at least people who are familiar with her and a lot of the news, there were a couple articles written about it in her day, just speaking about this particular piece and this particular statement. So I'm going to try and run through, because I see that time is also something that I'm going to have to be careful with. I'm going to actually run through a couple of different effects that I have heard over time, and then I'm going to try and play you guys a EDM piece that includes all of them, so you'll be able to kind of hear where these effects come from. And I hope that it'll go the way that I have. Actually, just a show of hands, have any of you guys like listened to electronic dance music or just electronic music in your free time, other than just like the occasional passing? I'm seeing a couple shrugs, a couple of nods. Well, maybe this will give you at least a little bit of a gateway into it, if you were at all curious. So here's a reference of a simple drone kind of pattern, a deep bass line. Now, the idea of a drone has been around for a while, but the idea of a synthesized drone has, was very much experimented with by Pollen. Now, this in particular was also added with other effects. So, like, there's a harmonica in here, there is a trombone at the very bottom supporting up the sound, and then I believe there's also a vocalist that comes in later on in this particular piece. So you have this idea of a bass drone. You have this breakdown of a highly produced sound in a sorry, it is really awkward for me to reach the chat sometimes. Yes, all right. I'll wrap up soon. Sorry for this one, but you should start to hear that this kind of sound as it's coming across. Just completely scratches out in a way. You also get a case of, I wrote the oldest case of electronic bells I ever heard. And then additionally, sorry, that's electronic oscillators. Here's some whoops and wishes, for lack of better terms. And then lastly, here's a piece that brings together all of these. And then you guys already listened to Bye Bye Butterfly, which has many of those other aspects in it. So I present to you a EDM piece, which is has a special place in my heart, that I hope you guys will be able to hear some of the aspects in it. That's the roll. Here we are. Is the volume okay on this? For the sake of brevity, I might just go through some of the sections here.
And if
I apologize. Yeah, I can totally wrap this up. I had no idea how long this presentation would be, so I immensely apologize. Um, uh, just to give a brief kind of 30 seconds of this, she also invented an entire system for the accordion that she constructed by herself, which she used for a play version of Lear, the Shakespeare production. And she also had many other albums where she involved the use of the accordion, which she also was involved with a accordion uh, orchestra, which involved 30 regular accordions, 6 bass accordions, and 6 percussionists. Um, Lastly, her biggest influence was on deep listening, which is where her and 3 of her colleagues went down into a cistern in somewhere in the San Francisco area for legal reasons. They didn't want to say where, but people later found out where it was. And it had this huge underground cavern, which you can kind of see through this place. Um, and through that process of they ended up recording this entire deep listening album, and hence 14 feet underground. It's deep listening. It's literally a pun, but it just gave this whole other meaning and definition for the term of being actively listening. Um, Major themes of her work: breaking down these barriers and preconceived notions that people have, particularly involving the fact that she was a female LGBT, where she married her wife in 1975, I believe, and also just a modern composer for anyone who's trying to play her work, and a living composer up till 2016, and then also connecting deeper through her music through the courses of meditation and breathing. Holy mackerel, I am so sorry for taking 40 minutes. It felt like 5 when I was up here. And that is pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Peter. So, one of the things that's important when we are teaching or presenting things, it's important to kind of know how long it'll take you to go through the material. And so, I'm constantly at fault with this because I'm trying to gauge how long something will take. So that's something you need to continue to practice and work on in all of your fields, right? Because you don't want to be assigned 12 minutes to present something and then go to 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Right? But presentation was, it was chock full of really amazing information, and Paulin Oliveros absolutely is the grande dame of contemporary music, continuing the mantle of John Cage, and is really a central, should have been a central figure. And if you look at the works played by most American orchestras, John Adams is sort of the grand poobah, and yet there are many important composers like Paulin Oliveros. And I think in many ways, she turned away from traditional notation because she found that, well, you know what? No one's going to play my work in the orchestral genre. So you're seeing a lot of composers turn away from the orchestral genre as a medium in which they write, because it is frustrating to devote, if you're writing a 40-minute symphony, that's a lot of time you're devoting to that creation of that piece. And then maybe it'll be played by one orchestra who premieres it because they want the credit of premiering a work. But second, third, fourth performances are very difficult to find, even for white male composers, let alone women composers and underrepresented composers. But questions for Peter? Rehan.
All right, Peter, so this one's a bit more personal, but I just want to ask. So at the beginning, you said you're interested in electronic music, right?
Yes, I did.
Uh, so what kind of music do you plan on going to? Is it more along the road of what she was composing, or more along the road of what, say, Porter Robinson did with his piece?
Yeah, I absolutely. I'm much more in the Porter Robinson camp of like composing music, but I was always curious of like where did this idea of electronics and putting music together come from? And then I just found her, and I was like, wow, well there you go. That answers that question pretty succinctly.
Awesome.
Rachel.
I think in one of the album covers that you showed us, she was like fiddling with some sort of, was it like a synthesizer or is
That
she?
was an accordion
Oh, okay,
that she's
okay,
on.
okay.
I will.
Did
Yeah.
she like ever use synthesizers, or was that not? Was that like after her time? I don't actually know.
So what's really interesting is she never her kind of influence on working with electronic music happened before this phase in like the late 70s and early 80s of like using synthesizers that you actually play. And she fell more in line of just, oh, well, I want to play my accordion and actually listening to the music that's being created, which, interesting enough, happened after she played electronic. So really, she didn't ever try and work with electronic music after the 70s, which is really interesting.
Gotcha.
So, you mentioned her work with tape music, right? So electronic music had this phase in the late 60s where, because they didn't have synthesizers, right? So actually the Moog synthesizer was invented here at Cornell. But so you should really find out more about that because our library has all kinds of material about the Moog synthesizer and the creation of it. But before the creation of the synthesizer, how composers really had to do electronic music, they were literally taping together tapes to create sound, right? So now we have DAWs, DAWs, where you can cut and paste all kinds of sounds and have effects. And I mean, what's at your fingertips in GarageBand is kind of amazing, right? So in some ways, it's a very modular commercial way of like dealing with music. So, but when composers didn't have access to that way of editing, and they literally had to cut and paste like with microfilm of tape. So we've come a long way since then. Yeah. I think in the interest of time, we need to go to Yizhe's presentation. So Yizhe, why don't you take over?
Okay. Share screen here. Can everyone see that okay? Like I haven't shared PPT like slides before. Everyone can see that okay? Okay. Like my Zoom like isn't kind of like in the way of the presentation, right? Okay.
Yeah, we can see the slide. That's working well.
Okay. So today I'm going to present about a living Chinese composer, like a piece is written like in 2000. It's called Ensemble dans l'opéra de Bégun, which translates to instance of a Peking opera. So it's a pretty interesting piece. So first of all, it's a brief introduction into the composer and why I chose him, because I think he is kind of like that bridge, a very interesting bridge between like Eastern and Western culture. I believe like his pieces are not just like when you have you try to like put Chinese instruments into a symphonic orchestra or things like that. But it's really like in the roots, like he had a lot of Chinese philosophy where he also had a lot of systematic like Western training. So he incorporated like both together. And I was pretty like surprised. He wasn't as well known in the West as like we know in China, because like in China he's pretty well known. But I had a chat with Professor Kim like last time, and I was pretty amazed to find out like he wasn't so famous. Like perhaps a show of hands, like how many people know him actually. Okay. Yeah. So I think he definitely deserves more attention, and I think also very interestingly, he is sometimes like regarded as like a Chinese like image in the Western world. Like for instance, the Shanghai Symphony Orchestra is pretty fond of his works, and like on their 140th anniversary tour, like in the West, like which included a stop at the BBC Proms, like they performed one of his pieces, like which is also in a later slide. Okay, so some early biographies. he passed his teens through the Cultural Revolution, which is quite notorious, and so you probably won't find any resources about that. And then, like after it ends, he became a compositional student at the Beijing Central Conservatory, which is like what Chinese composers like usually do. And then he got this really great chance of studying abroad in France. I believe like he was the only person to do so. Like it was just after like the Cultural Revolution, so the country wasn't so opened up, but he was like so excellent in his field, so he got the chance abroad. And then like at France, he met with Oliver Messiaen, and like at the time, Messiaen wasn't teaching because like he's already out of like conservatory, and he like adopted Chen as one of his like not one of his but like his only student at the time, like, and he passed like his last 5 years of life with like teaching Chen because like Messiaen think he was a really like exceptional talent. And then like obviously because he was studying in France, like he was a student of Messiaen, like he got some fame in France with some of his like earlier works. So these are like some of his like more famous earlier works. Like the middle one, Wu Xing, which is like translated to the Five Elements, is actually like what the Shanghai Symphony Orchestra performed at the BBC Proms. And you also see like I believe this is their first album with like DG. It also included this piece. And then like the two other pieces are pretty well known. And these three pieces, like through these, I think we can really see that Chen Xigong's works are a lot like, although they are like they don't really incorporate a lot like Chinese instruments or anything like that in the formal sense, but the ideas that they are really deriving from like Chinese traditional ideas. For instance, like the five elements is like what we have in China, like very Chinese idea, and also like his devoirs. So it is actually like a kind of like related to the Song Dynasty, like kind of poems and like songs. So that's pretty interesting, I think. And then obviously, why did it became famous, especially in China? I think is his like small venture into the popular culture. So obviously, like he collaborated with a filmmaker, I believe Zhang Yimou, and like wrote music for like 3 films. And then like obviously he was the composer for the theme song of the 2008 Beijing Olympics, and that's how a lot of people knows him, like why we know him. And I also knew him like because of this, but like his venture into popular culture is really like not so long. So after like some film music and the Beijing Olympics, like he returned to serious music. And then like his life, I would say, is quite like tragic. Like his son was previously working for him as like a producer and sort of that kind of role. But then like his son Chen Yuli passed away like in a car accident like in Zurich, and then like his life like took a great hit. And after that, like he like returned from Paris, like where he stayed to China, and he went to like a very rural setting and called Gonggen College, and he lived like there like a traditional Chinese hermit. If you don't know, like because Chinese like literary person and artists like they really live like kind of like in rural places to like um you think deeply, and that's like a tradition in Chinese culture. And then, quoting his own words, he was trying to search for resonance in people around the whole world. Like after he sat down and going to college for a lot of years, and he was thinking about like why he was writing music. Like in the first few years, like he was so emotionally like detached, but so he wasn't writing a lot. But then he started to write a lot of great pieces, and I think a piece like particularly like related to his perhaps life and also a very interesting piece is called La Joie de la Souffrance, which translates to like the joy of suffering. And I think it's a really interesting piece. It also includes a lot of Chinese traditional like melodies, and it's premiered like by Maxim Vengerov, and as it is in the form of a violin concerto, and it's really interesting piece. And he also plays an importance in educating the young generation at Gongong College, which he established a lot of workshops where he would invite young students. I think it's also related to like his educating experience with Messiaen, where like Messiaen also like adopted him as a young composer. So moving on to the piece that I'm going to talk about today is the background of it is actually like the 2000 Messiaen like piano competition. They commissioned him of a piece. So it was also very heavily influenced by French composers. Obviously, it's like for a French competition, but you can also see a lot of extensive use of Chinese materials. And have to say, like it isn't a particularly easy piece. Like the level is quite advanced because it's one competition, obviously. And the structure of it, I find it really interesting that you can analyze it in a Western way, but also you can analyze it in an Eastern way. So in the Western way, is although it's very contemporary, like you can like you kind of can be like disoriented when you listen to it the first time, but after you listen several times, it's a very traditional like actual structure. If you analyze it in a Western way, it's just like a theme and variation with like two themes like layering onto each other. But on another way, you can actually like relate the structure to structures like in parts of China, like Peking opera is called Banqiangti. I'm not really like familiar with that part, so I'm not sure if I can talk a lot about that. But I think that there's an important idea touched upon in this piece because like in some variations, like they are like having slower tempos and like middle variations, like they're having a lot faster tempos. And this like kind of stark contrast was related to this idea of Peking opera having the idea of sanban and yaoban, which is like kind of two completely different styles. And I think this combination of Eastern and Western structure is really interesting thing for us to see. And I think the harmonic part is heavily influenced by French composers, but also a lot of Chinese elements can be found in it. So first of all, if you like listen to it, you can certainly notice about like its roots and like pentatonic scale, which is commonly related to like the Chinese part. But there, you can also see a lot of like Western techniques, like what like done by French composers at the time, like bitonal things, like you have two separate like modes like in your left hand and your right hand. And the modes are also not like you can analyze it in like traditional Western sense, but you can also analyze it in like pentatonic sense, which is pretty interesting. And he has this like compositional philosophy of growing everything from a very small idea. So it actually grew up from like a 4-note theme, and like it just like the whole piece was based on a very simple idea, which kind of reminded me of like how Bruckner like did his compositions. I think like his compositional style is also pretty related with like how Bruckner like does his composition, because like he also revised his works a lot. And a very interesting anecdote was he was commissioned a work, and then like it was like it should be premiered, but with like the repetitions, like he was not so satisfied with his work, so he like canceled like the premiere and then like returned to rework his work. So I think that's really similar with Bruckner. And going on with meters, you can see a lot of changing meters, which I will show later, and it's kind of related to the three like Peking opera styles, because in Chinese music you don't have like you don't write that kind of meter like 3 4 4 4 and that kind of stuff. And there are also sections without meter at all, which is also related to the freestyles. I'm going to talk a little bit about like the general impression I got from the piece, because like obviously I'm not that familiar with Peking opera to talk a lot about that. But I think his idea of resonating with people from different backgrounds really touched upon my mind, and it's also a reason why I selected him to present. Because I think like you can really approach this piece from different angles, like as a Western musician or as an Eastern musician or as like a musician with like relationship with education in both. And also like you can understand it even if you are not so familiar with Peking opera, or you can also like view it in a different way if you're super familiar with Peking opera. But for me, like here it creates really like that atmosphere I felt with Peking opera, which you can hear like in a moment. And I think an interesting idea, like he also proposed, is contemporary music is not equal to no melodies, and also no like tones, and because some people like the kind of the phrase atonal, like when it's like ventured into the 20th century, like the definition of atonal was actually like pretty pondered upon. Like, does atonal mean like we need to deliberately like not try to write anything tonal out, or did like contemporary music mean we don't have no melody, we don't have any melodies, or are we just deliberately trying to like not doing what have been seen before? I think like this is an idea we could probably think about. And also like I think his music are kind of more accessible for people like especially in China about contemporary music, because I have to argue that in China contemporary music isn't so popular because like it's not so well covered, and like and I wasn't really interested into that before because like I didn't have exposure to that. And when I was listening to like pieces even by Schoenberg and Berg, who are really like not so avant-garde compared to like a lot of later composers, I wasn't like understanding about it. But I think his music actually like led me into like listening with contemporary music with like a fresh mind, like not trying to perhaps expect anything from it. So that's like my general impression from it. Here are some resources like I didn't find a PDF score like for the actually for this, but I just like searched, like Peter recommended a really great resource which I just found a score on it. But I also like have a score with a video here which I can share with you. I think let me reshare my screen. Yeah, can everybody see that? Okay. I'm just going to test the volume first. Like, what is it? Can everybody hear that? Like the volume, is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, so I think pretty interestingly, like if you look at the start of the score, like his idea of resultant harmony is pretty present here, because like the harmony is kind of built up through time. It's not like I gave a chord here, but it's like so here is, although like it may look really weird, but it's actually like built up on like a pentatonic scale. Like for the first few notes, like it's a like a quintal harmony, but then like you added something like next, so it's free. Like here you have can everybody see my cursor? Like it's a D sharp here, so it kind of changes the character, and like the harmony. So it was just pretty interesting. Yeah, and this is like the theme, like like the very simple theme that kind of the piece was built on. So you can see it's basically like two quintal harmonies like added together. Like I'm not sure, like is it like an E, like a pentatonic scale like starting in E and also like one starting in E flat, and they double together. I think it's really pretty reminiscent like of Debussy and like all that like 20th century French composers that we are having. And I don't know if you can hear that okay. Yeah, and pretty interestingly, like if you see it like at the first page, there's no meter markings. And like this idea of quintal harmony just goes on like on and on. Yeah. And you also see this idea of contrast like motion throughout this piece as well. And here you can also see like a really interesting like writing technique here he's using is like you write flats in like one voice, and you write like sharps in another voice. You like highlight the bitonal like qualities here. I think it's also like what a lot of people do like in 20th century. So you can see like here because the idea of resultant harmony is still like pretty much present because the harmony is kind of built throughout time as it is basically like two whole like pentatonic scales like quintal harmony, but then like it's not just presented to you at the first time. So I think it kind of presents like gives you an impression that like the harmony is kind of moving through time and it's not like that kind of impressionism, I think, is really like reminiscent of Debussy works. And then like you got this transition, and you went into like a faster section. So that's like the idea of like different parts of Peking opera I was talking about. And you can also see like this idea that is basically established from very like simple idea, and you just have like some modulations, but like it just kind of goes up and up and up. So I'm aware of time. Like, how long should the presentation be? Like 12 minutes, right? So I'm might a little bit like over time, right?
Yeah, if you can wrap up pretty soon, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can pretty much like just wrap up like here because I mean I can go into details of the piece, but I think okay, so maybe like about another insight on Peking opera I just like learned. So because like I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't know, like haven't studied so much about like Messiaen techniques. So for instance, like Messiaen have this thing called like modes of limited transposition, which you also use here, like later in the piece, but it's not something it's quite a detailed thing. And I think an insight on like Peking opera, I was like just viewing that recently, and this insight on it's actually like not only a form of music, but it's also a form like the actions, which is called 武戏, compared to like 文戏, which is like singing. You also have like of action, it's also acting and all that kind of stuff. It's also really important in Peking opera. So that's a pretty like interesting insight I have. And I think I can pretty much stop here because you can go into endless details here. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Yizhe. I think what a good sign, I think, when we start to do research and delve deep into a composer and composer's works is that what we discover is such a deep well of information and knowledge that we want to share. And so it's always a good sign. It's not a red flag. It's always a sign that you have really done a deep research and it's really gotten you excited about a particular composer or their work. So I find whenever you sort of start to see that, oh, I have way too much information, that's when you know you're sort of on the right track, right? I would also, but ask both of you, Peter and Yizhe, to think about now that you know all of that, right? So I think that the deep knowledge, because in some ways, the deep research and the depth of research you have done, now it's the next phase would be sort of figuring out how to make that knowledge much more transferable to another person, right? So what you want to be able to do, in a way, have different layers of pitch, right? So if you were to reduce that to an elevator pitch, like you have a minute, 30 seconds to a minute you're in the elevator with the CEO of Google or somebody where you have to pitch this idea, and basically during the ride to the 12th floor, right? To a reduction into a 5-minute version, 10-minute version, 45-minute class, right? So I think when you can do real mastery comes when you can do those layers of translation into various levels of understanding, right? So if you take another musicologist who have just as much deep knowledge and have a 2-hour conversation, that's one level of understanding, right? But if you can transfer this knowledge that you have on a composer or an engineering principle and explain it to a layperson who has no concept or no base level understanding, but yet they are able to walk away with a lot of information about, wow, I would really like to know about that. Jacob Collier did this YouTube video talking about harmony, talking to a 10-year-old high school person, college music major, Herbie Hancock. And it really showed a mastery of the subject, right? So in some ways, we want to be able to have that skill set to be able to talk to a deeply involved specialist, as well as the layperson who may not have any information on your subject, right? So think about engaging. And so in a way, our presentation, it's supposed to be sort of not that introductory layer, but 12 minutes of engagement, right? So in a way, both of you a little bit miscalculated where you want to kind of engage in and how much, right? So I applaud your excitement and the state you got in terms of the electrons being excited about the subject, but in some ways the gauging of how long and what to pick out of that deep trove of knowledge that needed to happen, right? Okay, we have 3 minutes left. Questions for the group? Rehan, then Rachel.
Oh, okay. I had two, but I'll just give one. So EJ, when you said that like the reason you chose him is a connection of cultures, did you mean that he blends like Chinese elements with Western elements? Was
Yeah,
that
yeah. That was I was meaning because like when you see like in his piece you can see like not only like Chinese harmonies but also like Chinese ideas. So I think it's kind of related to like the ancient Chinese culture, like where you have like the Chinese philosophers, like their ideas is kind of different from like what like the Western viewpoint, and like it kind of like his works kind of blend that with you know, in a Western setting where it can be like I think more easily accepted by the Westerners.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Rachel?
I actually noticed that the score you had up, it was in Chinese but also in English. Do you know if his scores are usually published with like both? And also if he considers himself, I guess, does he consider himself like a fusion composer or mostly Chinese or French or?
So yeah, I think his scores are like actually like in Chinese and French. Like uh yeah. So I think he considers himself like more as a Chinese composer because like he's not like for instance like another like Chinese related composer like Tan Dun, he's kind of like more considers himself like I'm not sure like a Chinese American composer, but like Chen Xigang, he like grew up in China and he just like he's now still in China and he still considers himself more or less Chinese, but I think like he also like because he's done like so much education at France, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely hear Messiaen's influence in Kigang's music, and so I think that it's sort of natural for composers to represent their experience, right? I think Bright Shang and Tandun are examples where even though they're trained in China, their main career was in the United States, right? So Bright Shang was a fellow at Tanglewood. He's been teaching at the University of Michigan for 30 years. So that reflects his involvement in the West and the US and the influences the US has on his output creatively, right? Yeah, so I think that's natural. Yeah. We're at the 40 mark, 11:40 mark, 2:40 mark. So just a reminder, Alec, are you planning to do a presentation? Okay, so we'll hear Alec's presentation on Monday. And then Wednesday, I would like to offer, because we have Wynton Marsalis coming to speak to the orchestra. And so I would like to offer that to you as our final session. So we'll meet as a class for the final time on Monday, hear Alec's presentation, and I'll do a wrap up and questions and issues raised, and we can sort of have a discussion about the semester's work. And then Wednesday, you are welcome to join the orchestra for us to engage with Wynton Marsalis. If you would like, I can send, what I'll do is I'll, in the email, oh no, that's the Moog. I've been preparing an email. So in the email, I will have the registration link for Wynton Marsalis's visit, different links mentioned today, but also have the reading materials that I've assigned the orchestra to respond to and question about Wynton Marsalis. There are various videos, him talking about social justice issues and BLM movement, but also performances. So I'll give you links to those in the email that I send out today once we have the video that's been rendered. Okay. I am I am continuing to work on giving you feedback on all of your videos. It's just it takes time because I'm actually going through each one and giving you a video feedback. So I appreciate your patience in that getting done. This morning I went through all of the feedback that you have given each other on your podcast, as well as the guest speaker reflections. With your permission, I would like to send those reflections to each of the speakers. I don't think there's anything that's negative, so I think they're mostly complimentary, and so I think they would enjoy reading about your reflections. So I will send each reflection for each speaker to our 3 guest speakers, and they may respond, or they might not. Okay. All right. So I will see everybody on Monday, and Alec will present his presentation, and we'll do a wrap up. And then our final time will be Wednesday the 16th during the Wynton Marsalis talk with the Cornell Orchestra, which starts at 4:55 and goes till 6:25 on December 16th. Okay. All right. Be sure to do a course evaluation. That helps me, of course, in a various number of ways in making the course better. I'm always trying to learn from the process of teaching and getting feedback, and I can't make this course better without your work. So future courses will rest on the feedback and refinements that needs to happen, especially in a Zoom setting like this. So on some ways, I thought we'll talk more about this on Monday, but I had to learn to adjust to the setting, this setting, because obviously if we're in person, there would have been a lot more hands-on engagement in terms of like getting in front of an orchestra and actually conducting people rather than recordings. Okay, so yeah, but I have to say, I think we were able to cover a lot of ground in this format, and so that's been really challenging, but interesting as well for me as well. Okay, so we'll talk more about that on Monday. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.